China.
China.
If you haven't watched the video I put out, all right, you should go do that. It's a short clip. It's like 4 or 5 minutes.
What do you think would happen if the U.S. went to war with China?
Wouldn't be a U.S. anymore. Like, we would be thrown back into the Stone Age. Like, you got soldiers who are more concerned about can they wear a dress on the weekends? They put up a good fight. China would crush us.
A former Ranger Nick Irving, basically talking about how China would absolutely crush and destroy the United States, and it wouldn't be close, and they'd send us back to the Stone Age, and yada, 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 yada. So what we're going to talk about is, obviously I did my take on that. Is that realistic? What does war with China actually look like? Okay, I would say, I mean, Jake are both going to tell you up front, we're going to work in hypotheticals, okay, because the reality of like the United States and China going to real war where one side invades the other country, that ain't gonna happen, homies. Not in the foreseeable future because our economies are so intertwined and all that. But from a hypothetical, if we did, that's what we're gonna discuss. Okay, my take is people drastically overestimate China's capabilities, from technology to their military to their propensity to fight a war. Okay, if we're talking about combat experience, all these different types of things. The first thing we could talk about is the power grid, right? That gets brought up, and I think this is probably the most serious thing to talk about. There's a lot of credibility. There's more credibility in what Nick said in this, although I don't think he really understands what the power grid really is. But like Jake knows, there is severe vulnerabilities in our power grid that China could potentially access. So what does an attack on the power grid actually look like realistically? Because he tried to say, oh, they just hack into the computer and then shut the entire country down.
Okay.
Now, is that how things actually work?
So Nate, let's just be clear. They hacked in and shut down a quarter of the country in the 2004 Northeast power grid shutdown. So he's not far off. Okay.
Did we actually know that China hacked in and did that?
So let me say this.
I heard that was speculation.
Let me say this.
No, I'm not saying it didn't happen.
I don't know who did it, but I was working in critical infrastructure protection at that time for a consulting firm. Okay. My sponsor is one of the SMEs in the whole country on critical infrastructure protection. So I've done a bunch of red cell work for him, right? And what I'm going to say is Trump shut down all of the transformers. So if you don't know, a transformer transforms high voltage or high current electricity into low voltage dissipating current. So like for home use, right? So if you go to those power wires.
Yeah. It takes, guys, if you go to a hydroelectric dam and it's pumping insane electricity out of that, the transformers is what then allows that to be distributed to the rest of the network and your home and things like that.
So our build time for a transformer in America is 9 months because every one of them is a custom transformer, okay? So we were buying a lot of transformers from China. Well, we found a back door. So if you guys don't know what a back door is, a back door basically in programming or code allows you to get in through all security measures, okay? Well, Trump shut that down. And then Biden to open it back up. I don't know the exact number. I'm just going to say 400.
I think it's around 400. I think it was around 450 in the report I saw.
450 transformers came from China and got put into our services, okay? So I'm going to say this. But the easiest way to shut them down is like they did in the San Jose transformer attack. They just shot them below the midline with AK-47s, poked holes in them.
That's what I want to talk about next, is the physical side of things. But keep going.
From the cyber side, absolutely. But here's the deal. They're just as vulnerable as we are. Okay.
Well, we're going
to mutually assured destruction.
Okay? And let's talk that, okay? And this is a big part of what I think Nick missed, okay, is that this isn't a one-way range. Right. So everything he said was sort of like perspective of a one-way range. This is what China could do to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say China manages to shut down some of the power grid. What do you think the United States response is? Do you think we just go, oops, no, we immediately shut down all your power as well. And then we'll get a little bit into which populace can handle that before they overthrow their government faster, right? In here in a little bit, because I think that's an interesting interesting
Nate,
topic of conversation. But
I got this one too. We're gonna talk
yeah,
about this.
we'll get in. But first, let's talk physical infrastructure because I think that is more of a threat of being because, like you said, it doesn't take much to shoot some fucking AK bullets into a transformer. So for me, that's where I think we'd be more susceptible because, like it or not, there are a lot of Chinese nationals currently in our country that could very easily be turned on as sleeper agents to physically attack, whether it be the actual production facilities, more likely the transformers and the distributed networks. I think that's like a more easy target, right? Like targeting a dam is not easy. Like you said,
Targeting a dam is very easy, Nate. There's no security.
yeah, but I mean, you'd have to. What I mean is, it's a lot harder. You can't just go and shoot some AK-47 bullets into the side of a dam and cut off the power, which you can do. Knock down telephone poles, knock down like shoot holes in transformers. See what I mean? I'm just talking about ease of access from. Because here's what I think people miss is if let's say this is a hypothetical United States and America are at war, we are not just allowing Chinese nationals free roam to walk right up to our facilities like our power.
We're gonna put some people in charge. Yes, I agree with that. But I'll tell you what.
Not to say it's not possible because it is. Yeah, the network's huge.
And this is the one that so when people start talking about critical infrastructure protection, nobody quite understands how hard it is to defend against, call it 1,000,000 miles of power line. Okay, just high voltage. The big ass towers. So if I connect any one of those two lines together with, let's say, a chain, I blow up both transformer stations, the one it's going to and the one it's coming from. Okay? So I want people to understand, we're not talking, I don't need a fucking aircraft to disable the power between two nodes. Now, I will say this. I just looked at this maybe 2 weeks ago because someone was talking about the nodes in our power system. Right now, it's 2025. In 2004, when I was working on this stuff, there were no nodes. Everything was one directional. Now, east of Mississippi, they have quadrupled the number of nodes in the system so that they can get around like a blown out transformer station.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some redundancy, but from a physical side, the transformer stations is your biggest weakness, obviously.
Right. That's what I think. And in the video that I did, I said that's where I'm going to give Nick credence and yes, this is a huge threat. It is vulnerable, and actually got a super chat that sort of ties into the reality of if this happened, right? So Plight Designs $10. Thank you, brother. Says China can hack or knock out the power grid, but we can respond to attack via the Three Gorges Dam. Also, their buildings are worse in the structural integrity side of things. So this is a great point in that. Sure, China decides to hack and target and fucking shut down a bunch of our power and fuck up our power grid. And then the United States responds, right? And we most likely turn off the power to China for the rest of their human existence. What does that mean? Mutually assured destruction. Okay, so the way I look at it, attacking the power grid is much like nuclear weaponry. If you decide to do it, and this is why you haven't seen it in Russia and Ukraine, right? Everybody had all the worries that Russia was going to attack the power grid and attack the nuclear facilities, and they didn't. Why? Because once you decide to do that, and the other side decides to do that to you, then we get into, well, what happens to the population when the power's turned out? And this is where I think this is why China is not going to play this game, right? When we talk about actual cultures, who has more self-sustainability, the Chinese people or Americans? Let's ask yourself that, and then we'll get into what a collapse of a country actually looks like. Because China has what's a 5,000-year-old part of their culture called the Mandate of Heaven, which is extremely important when you talk about society beginning to collapse within the government. It's actually the government of China's biggest fear is its own people, right? They spend more on internal defense than they do on external defense by far. And we can talk a little bit about that because I think that's important to say okay, we shut off the power. We also shut off the power in China. Then what happens? Does the war continue?
So here's what I'm going to say because I'm a big prepper, okay? And I'm gonna encourage everybody to go look at the 1 second after. Go wiki, put in 1 second after, read the book, okay? And understand this, 95% of the United States population lives on the coast, okay? The population decrease after 1 year with no power will be 95%. There'll be 5% of the United States population. Nate made a point, and I'm going to give a timeline. You have 96 hours with no power before you have absolute Armageddon. And you can, if you don't believe me, go down there and look at what happened in Katrina.
In the inner cities, in the big cities.
So this is how you got to define it.
It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit longer to hit the rural areas, but yes, I agree.
In the Midwest, they only expect a 50% population drop, right? Because you don't have the population density and you have resources. So I tell everybody, I'm in San Antonio. If the power goes out for fucking 2 days, you won't find me in San Antonio, okay?
Right.
Because there are no resources here, none. There's no food, there's no water, and there's 3 million fucking people with a lot of guns. Everybody's getting fucking killed. I got 3 kids and a wife, 1 bullet wound, and I'm fucking losing somebody. So I can't have no gunfights, right? And that's the part of it where we talk about like this mutually assured destruction. Now, here's the other aspect of this that we need to talk about. You've got to understand in critical infrastructure protection, I don't have to take out the whole network. I just have to take out enough to make sure that no one can power up their equipment without branding out the system. So what do I mean? If I go to Florida and I decrease their power consumption or their power production by 25%, I basically can shut down all of Florida because when everybody tries to turn on all their shit, they're going to brown out the system because they're trying to pull too much from it. And you can't do nothing about it, right? Like I don't have to shut down 100% of the system to get the country to go into fucking fail state. But I kind of agree with you, Nate. Like we're playing, you're talking about like, hey, like it's going to get real quick. Now,
so
the other thing to think about is,
this was kind of my point with that is we know how that works in America, right? We talk about that big of population loss, things like that. Now look at China and Chinese society, where the government controls everything. There are no resources for the populace. There are no guns for them. But however, like I said, with the mandate of heaven, and this goes back to the emperors in 4000 BC, it's always been this way, much how Mao actually took power. What the mandate of heaven is, and it's very important for leadership in China, for you guys to understand the viewership. Mandate of heaven is basically the idea that the gods have instilled power into the ruler of China. Okay, so that's how he rules divinely. So Xi Jinping rules from divine authority, essentially. But the requirement of that is he has to do so justly, and he has to basically uphold a positive society, right? So when the power gets shut off in China and that real war starts and all the infrastructure evaporates and people are starving to death, right? And they don't have the ability to go get things, the people will revolt. This is what the Chinese people do. They've done it for 5,000 years. And they're going to overthrow that government much faster than the United States, the people of the United States who are far more patriotic and all these types of things, right? Because you kind of have in China, the government controls everything, right? But the people of China don't necessarily like hate their government all the time. But you don't have this like insane devout patriotism like you do in Texas, right? Where people are going to defend the country like all the way to the bitter end. The Chinese people are much more apt to actually just overthrow their government and stop the war, right? And instill something else. So, but again, that's your mutually like now, if that's happening in the United States and China at the same time, what war is being fought? Because both populations are in chaos, right? Now you maybe open up the doors to other countries getting involved in the chaos, which is most likely what would happen, right? But as for this direct war, when the power gets shut off, like, well, here's the thing. If I'm a soldier, I'm at home with my family, homie. I'm not showing up to work. If I'm a police officer, I'm making sure my family's protected. And that's happening in China too. So
and understand this. China has 25 cities bigger than New York City. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They have a 1.4 billion population, 95% of it on the coast, on one coast. Okay. Yep. So just do the math. They might last 48 hours without power.
And when you talk about just natural resources, big part of it. America is one of, if not the most natural resource rich countries in the entire planet, from everything: timber, food, agriculture, oil, natural gas. Like, You name it, we got it. China is the opposite of that. China is incredibly natural resource poor. They have to import. Now, they're a manufacturing giant. Okay, that's where China brings all their GDP and their money in through manufacturing. But they're not when it comes to agriculture. They have most of their country is completely unfarmable land. They don't have hardly any access to oil. And like Jake said, if I want to turn off your power, I'm going to turn off your natural resources too. Because 85 to 90% of China's oil comes from the Middle East through the sea, down through the Strait of Malacca, up through the South China Sea, up through the Strait of Taiwan. And who all along that route, who's there? All of American allies, right? Indonesia, Australia, Taiwan, Okinawa, Japan, Thailand.
Let me give you
So
one better, Nate.
that naval route, my point is that oil naval route that China is completely required on to run their country, that goes bye-bye. And that's just outside of America's submarines and fucking Navy.
That's all I wanted you to say. That's all I wanted you to say.
We're just going to
Nate.
instantly sink your oil tankers. But so again, guys, are you starting to get the picture of why really the talk about China? And again, I'm not saying that China wouldn't fuck us up. I'm saying we would destroy each other, and America would most likely be the country that somehow continues to exist in some form. But the idea that China crushes the United States in any capacity by its without it's just not realistic. I don't think.
Like let's say like 1 second after is based on a Chinese pulse, EMP, right? We all got EMP weapons now. They ain't no fucking secret, okay? And like it's the same thing. Like you can't have a war like they're having in Ukraine with real powers, right? Like
so
somebody's gonna step up.
But Jake, I think the war in Ukraine with Russia is a great case study of why all of these advanced weapons really don't matter. Nukes, EMPs, shutting off the power grid. Because why hasn't any of that happened in Ukraine, Russia? Because both sides know the second one of us does this, both of our countries fucking evaporate. So it's almost like this technology is so high that it doesn't, even if you do go to First World War between Russia and Ukraine, they're fighting with tanks and trenches and drones. Right? They're not even using their advanced technology because, again, mutually assured destruction. So if we went to war with China, I don't think, like, you can't even use this type of stuff. Or, again, like, your Navy disappears overnight. So does ours. All our aircraft carriers, gone. Just, subsonic fucking warheads come down. Those are going to evaporate instantly.
The supersonic sunscreen.
Or people talk about, like, oh, the navies and this and that. It's like, well, our Navy is going to just slow roll our ass from the West Coast through the Pacific Ocean all the way to the mainland China and drop troops off, and vice versa? Probably not, guys.
Well, Nate, 1997, I'm on a ship, and we know China's doctrine. Launch 1,000 missiles at every ship, and it will sink because it only has enough bullets in its anti-aircraft guns to shoot down like eight aircraft. So we'll just launch 1,000 at each one, and then we're guaranteed we're good. That's the thing that, like, I'd be in the little meetings, and I was like, yo, this don't make a lot of sense, man. Like, you might have a better plan for this. So what else we need to cover on China, man? That was a hot one, brother.
Real quick. So super chat from Polite Designs, $10. Thank you again, brother. Also with the cyber side, who's to say we don't have a Stuxnet, or we can talk about that in a sec, or Stuxnet sitting in China ready to go. We're also doing this in a vacuum, assuming that all the neighbors who don't like China won't respond. That's a good point as well. That's sort of what I was just mentioning of, like, we have a lot of allies in that South China Sea also, and China has no allies on our continent, right? So that's a big problem. Also, you got Mongolia sitting right there who hates China's fucking guts and is just looking for a reason to exact some revenge, okay? But talking about the digital side, Stuxnet. Do you know about Stuxnet virus, Jake? All right, so I'll just let everybody in the chat know because it's kind of a niche thing. But so the Stuxnet basically was a virus. This was probably 10-ish years ago. Polite will probably give me the exact dates. But essentially what it was a virus that they eventually found this tech company in California, basically found it on all their computers, and then basically they found it on every computer, really from America all the way into Europe. And this virus basically was a dormant virus that did nothing. But eventually what it did is it would hop from computer to computer, not doing anything until it found Iranian nuclear facilities. And once it got into those Iranian nuclear facilities, it basically, and again, my details might be a little fuzzy. It's been 10 years since I watched the documentary on this. The virus then activated and turned those nuclear facilities on into full ramp, and they couldn't shut them off, and it basically just melted down Iran's nuclear reactors. No one knows how that virus got made. They had like US Silicon Valley tech companies trying to reverse engineer this virus, and they couldn't do it. It was so advanced that that it had to have been done basically at a nation level. Of course, the assumption is Israel, in conjunction with the United States, developed this virus to be used because it was so specific. So, and that was 10, 15 years ago. You imagine technology now does, but with AI? Yeah. So I think that's a good point. I mean, when we talk about digital attacks, and we're looking, again, this is a lens of like, oh, we're only talking about China. When we talk about digital attacks, I can assure you, America is very, very good at hacking and digital attacks too, in cyber warfare. The type of stuff we have going on in Silicon Valley and in the basement of the Pentagon. Yeah.
I'm going to say this state-sponsored hacking, right? Russia and China are two of the top players. Okay. And this goes back to kind of what you were saying, Nate. It ain't helping Russia right now in Ukraine.
Yep.
Okay.
Not at all.
Because they can't play the shut the power grid down game, right? And
yep.
so, or like my thing is they can't hack the airplanes. Hell, we're using fiber optic drones, so they can't hack the drones, right? Like, all of this stuff sounds great, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna say it like this: we're America. We ain't got no problem fighting. We ain't like.
Yeah. That's last one I want to talk about because you just brought it up. We're America. We ain't got no problem fighting. That's the most important thing. So many people who haven't been in the military and really haven't trained, don't understand the military, don't understand or been in real combat. And I can tell you from a guy, my first combat mission to my 20th combat mission, the difference in my own skill and capability of what's going on around me was drastically enormous just due to my own combat experience that I built up over time. The United States, hate it or love it, right? We are the most battle-tested military basically in world history from a duration point, right? 20 years of the last global war on terror. Ukraine's going to get pretty close if they keep fighting a first world peer-to-peer conflict like that. But who are we talking about fighting here? China? You in the chat know the last time that China went to war and who it was with? 1979 with Vietnam, right after us. And they fucking lost, right? And that was their neighbor. It wasn't like us trying to fight a war across the world. That's right there, right? So China has no combat experience. They are probably the most untested. Now, you talk about all the first world countries, Britain, Australia, Russia, Ukraine, right? All of these countries have been fighting for the last 20 years in some capacity. Middle East, Ukraine, Russia. China hasn't. Even North Korea's in the game, bro. North Korea is more battle tested than China. So when you're talking about completely untested, all you're talking about generals, high-level leadership, none of them have any war or combat experience. It's all theoretical. And then you want to fight against the greatest and most battle-tested military that's ever existed, probably with the highest technology in the last 100 years. I don't know, man. If I'm going to put my money on one of the two of those, I don't think I'm going to put my money on the football team that just picked up playing football last week, right, against the Patriots. Like, that's not the way I'm going to guess on it. But what's your thought on that for actual,
Nate,
like,
I'm gonna
what these wars look like?
I'm going to go this way, okay? The cultural difference between China and America could not be greater.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If you think, you know what everybody else's opinion of us is? They think we're fucking John Wayne in one of those Western movies. They fucking like guns and fucking like dog. We have no problem.
It's not far off the truth.
It's not. But we'll fight. Like we you know, like I want to bring mild kindergarten fights back to like America. Like we need to have some fighting because like that's what we do. We don't have no problem fighting, right?
Yeah.
But if you go to China, all the fish swim in the same direction, right? I don't know what the saying is, but I know what it is. All the fish swim in the same direction. Don't swim in the other direction with the fish, right?
Yep.
It is a docile environment. Now, they're going to say, oh, well, we can fight. Okay, great. But it ain't your fucking personality. You guys don't have fist fights in fucking grade school, right?
And culturally, they never have, right? There's a reason why Japan marched through all of China and just obliterated China in World War II, right? Like, and it's why China got bulldozed in the Korean War. It's why China got bulldozed by Vietnam. China culturally has not demonstrated that they are a warrior society. And you need a warrior society if you want to fight a one-on-one war. You know who does have warrior societies, whether you like it or not? Russia. Russia's willing to stack bodies to eternity, bro. And they have done it for 100 years. They don't care. They will send everybody to fight, right? And Ukraine's the same way. Now, again, that's obviously just basic ethnic Russians, right? But these are warrior societies. America's another warrior society. Japan used to be, not obviously not anymore, but those are the type of societies. Germany, right? Hitler's Germany, no compliments to that, but that was a warrior society. These are the societies that in war, look at Germany. They almost took over the entire world. People talk about numbers, right? And technology. It's like Germany fought half the fucking world and almost won, right? As a fucking small country, okay? So the warrior class societies win the wars, right? In my opinion. And so if I'm going to, and that was another thing Nick Irving said in his video that I really didn't like. There's a lot of disparage on the current generation of military soldiers. A lot of talk about how, they're not ready to fight and they just want to wear dresses and all this different shit. What I think is that was like the worst part of that whole video to me is because you and I know as guys, I got out recently, you're mentoring young generations. Is there some crazy DEI shit in the military? Sure. Is that indicative of all the young men and women who want to serve their nation? Fuck no, right? I just left a year and a half ago. 99.9% of young SF dudes are like fucking hitters, like training nonstop, ready to go. You know what I mean? And that's not going away, in the near future for sure.
We got about a million active duty troops. Okay, I guarantee you and I could go out there and find another 5 million savages to fight for this country.
Oh, and a real fucking like the country's gonna end if not. Yeah, for sure.
Like that, bro. Like, I mean, think about this. I told my wife, I was like, fuck, I'll go drive a ship. I can't do SF no more, but I'll go be a fucking ship captain.
Well,
I'll fight the fuck out of this shit.
It's the same reason why in Robin Sage, all the G Chiefs are my dad's era. And they're the ones that run shop, man. I might not be able to fight, but this is still intact, and this knows how to do war. And so for everybody that thinks like, oh, well, the global war on terror is ending, yeah, but you know how many sergeant majors and team sergeants and commanders have been fighting the global war on terror for the last 20 years who are still in? And not just that, guys who are retired, you think couldn't be, former sergeant majors and team sergeants can't be reactivated to fight a real war? Like me and Jake, I can guarantee you if we went to real war with China, both of our asses would be pulled back in. I'm talking first world. Yeah, we're all back, right?
We're all fucking going, bro. Like, I don't want my kids to have to fight this war. You don't want your kids to have to fight this war, right? Like, and that's what I told my wife. Like, I would love just, to fly. Like, maybe I'll go fly transports across America. Like, I will be doing something, because I'm not gonna let my fucking kids go get fucking hacked up. And if we don't win, that's what happens.
Or training the dudes, man. Training and teaching the dudes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I got 2 super chats. Fire conversation about China. Hey, what's your number right now? Because my number is astronomical.
Almost 500.
I'm at 463, bro. Like,
all right, we're cooking, dude.
We doing well, man. Hey, Richard Channel, appreciated it. $5, great show. Do you think our country's high gun ownership makes it impossible to invade? What state would have the best militia? I'm going to jump on this one first. So Japan has a saying when they were asked why you never invaded the United States, because there's a gun behind every blade of grass. Okay.
Oh yeah, I love that saying. I love that
100% true. And then I'm going to tell you this. Texas has tried to be its own state like 3 or 4 different times. It has the 11th GDP in the world. I live in Texas and I ain't fucking going nowhere because when if this shit goes down, Texas is going to be a kick-ass country.
Texas by itself right? If you just took what Texas had, would be probably one of the most formidable, when you take the people of Texas, like the military's National Guard, probably be one of the most formidable militaries in the world. Just Texas by itself. And that's not me kidding. I mean, that's really realistically is probably true. Are you looking at my live? I had the exact same comment.
Let me tell you something. I'm not going to say yes or no, but I am on your live.
Hopefully you haven't been.
Wait, is that possible? How is it not letting me see? Oh my God, Nate, I'm only 53, Nate. Maybe sometime
More dinosaur shit. Well, because you said your numbers, and I looked at mine. I'm like, wait, we have the exact same numbers. And then you read the comment off, and I'm like, oh, I just have that comment too.
You're like, oh, this dude's still in my.
Well, hopefully you didn't miss fucking super chats over on your.
I'm gonna go get him. Real quick. Let me go get him. Let me
read off the rest of these while you figure that out.
Go ahead.
All right. Flight Design's $10. They got equipment into the air gap network. I'm assuming this is the Stuxnet response, and it attacked the Siemens protocol and system. A guy took the laptop out of the air gap, and that's how it went wild. It used 30 days to work. Yeah, I remember we learned about the Stuxnet in the 18 Echo course a long time ago, but it's been a decade since I've seen the story. But yeah, definite. We had that technology, 10, 15 years ago? You can only imagine what we got now. All right, from Grand Bear, what's up, brother? $2, thank you. China can send their terracotta army. Their Timu army, dude.